What's up, guys? Welcome to Movie Emporium's Flashback Reviews, where I take movies, of course, from the past, break them down, and tell you what I think about them. If you like what you see, of course, hit the subscribe button. Join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming next, and comment below on any video that you watch on my channel. So we head into 1967, which is 2 years after Thunderball came out. Thunderball, of course, was very successful, so they did greenlight a new James Bond movie. And we're going to talk about You Only Live Twice, which is Sean Connery's second to last film as James Bond in the official canon. Brings in director Gilbert, who is end up going to direct 3 of these Bond franchise films. And because Richard Maibaum is unfortunately unavailable as the writer for this film, they brought in Roald Dahl, which is kind of interesting because he's known for doing like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. But it feels like a Bond film, so you know what? It does work, so it's still kind of interesting. So You Only Live Twice is a story of MI6 sending James Bond to Japan to figure out why these satellite man-made spacecrafts have been taken. And who is behind it. They're accusing the Japanese of doing this because it happens over the Sea of Japan, but of course we know it's S.P.E.C.T.R.E. And it's basically in the midst of the Cold War, and as we know, the Cold War was happening at this point from like the early 60s to about the mid 80s. There was a lot of major tension going on, and basically this movie shows the tension that is involved between the Americans and the Russians, which was the major factor of this. And so he goes over there and he ends up in a sumo wrestling match, which is kind of awesome because I love sumo wrestling. I think it's fantastic. I think I could have been a great sumo wrestler if I had been, a Japanese person. And he meets a character played by Akiko Wakabayashi, who plays Aki, and Aki is a Secret Service agent for Japan. So Aki takes James Bond to visit this guy named Nico Henderson, who's an undercover agent for MI6. Nico has a lot of information about what's going on in Japan and why these spacecrafts are being taken. But before he can divulge the information, he is killed. He is put out of commission. And so James Bond, as he does, goes and chases after the assassin. He ends up in the chemical plant of the character named Mr. Osato. And he finds Mr. Osato's safe. And in the safe, it has a picture, has some information that he takes. And as he's trying to escape the security of Osato's building, he falls through a trapdoor, which brings him into a room, which is the head of security for Osato Industries. And the character is played by Tetsurô Tanba, who plays Tiger Tanaka. Tiger Tanaka is very loyal to Osato, but as the information is divulged that James Bond is found, he becomes kind of a loyal friend to James Bond because he's so loyal to the country of Japan itself. So as Tiger Tanaka and James Bond become fast friends, they learn of this ship called the Ningpo, which they go and visit with Aki. And basically we find out that this ship is delivering rocket fuel for S.P.E.C.T.R.E, for this shadowy organization. So James Bond, the very next day, heads back to the chemical plant of Mr. Osato, and he meets the character who is played by Teru Shimada. And Mr. Osato is a businessman. He's an older fellow, but he's of course working for S.P.E.C.T.R.E, so he knows who James Bond is. And he humors him at first, and then basically James Bond has to rescue with Aki, and James Bond gets Aki rescued, but then he gets captured, and he wakes up to this character name played by Karin, who plays Helga Brandt. Well, this leads to a really interesting sequence where Helga basically takes him up into a prop plane. She destroys the prop plane's mechanics, and she jumps out, leaving Bond to basically crash land into Earth. But as we know how things are going to work out, James Bond escapes. And after this has happened, we are all of a sudden with Tanaka and Aki and James Bond on an island sipping drinks. And this is where we get Desmond Llewelyn. And Desmond Llewelyn is in like a Hawaiian shirt, and he's in khakis, and he's much more fun in this movie than even before in Thunderball, where he was a lot of fun. He's throwing quips at James Bond and so on and so forth. And he builds James this like prop helicopter. It's very similar if you've ever played like Far Cry 4, I think it was. It's this like really weird one-person prop helicopter, and basically it's used to kind of survey the land to try and figure out where S.P.E.C.T.R.'s base is at, because James Bond knows who S.P.E.C.T.R. is. And he basically is being chased by these 4 or 5 helicopters that are run by S.P.E.C.T.R. And there's this really fun chase sequence. The helicopter that James Bond is very 60s like. It's very weird today, but it's a cool action sequence that we see a lot of helicopters get exploded, and there's a lot of cool mechanisms on this helicopter. So it's a fun action sequence. It's very 60s, but it's a good time that watching it. And then we learn that of where S.P.E.C.T.R.'s base is, which is in this volcanic area in this island off of Japan itself. And inside we see Mr. Osato and Helga, who are 2 main operatives of S.P.E.C.T.R. But because Blofeld, who is played by, like I said, by Donald Pleasence in this movie, he basically says they failed him, and he shows the piranha tank. Well, the piranha tank is like the shark tank in the last film where people get thrown into it and eaten alive, but you don't see the piranha, so it's just you gotta have to have your own imagination, but it's a lot of fun to watch. And what is happening is they're walking back up the steps because he's like, you need to kill James Bond. And Helga, who is walking over the platform, right before she gets on the other side, Blofeld presses the button and Helga is eaten by piranhas. And it's a really cheesy sequence, but you kind of just have fun with it because it's like over the top and outlandish because Blofeld's over the top and outlandish. So for the time, for what it's worth, it's a lot of fun. And then we go back to James Bond and Aki and Tanaka. They're basically going to go to this island that S.P.E.C.T.R.E runs as fishermen, and Aki is killed. It kind of sucks because she was a fun character. She's a cool Bond girl, but once again, like I said in my other videos, the main problem I find is when somebody dies, they're all of a sudden forgotten about real quickly because the very next day or maybe a week later, it's not really specified. Because Aki is killed and James Bond needs to basically masquerade as a fisherman with a wife, Tanaka brings in his student who is played by Mia Hame, who plays Kissy, and she is another attractive Bond girl. And basically, she and Bond infiltrate this island, and they basically try to break in. But Bond, of course, is captured because he tries to masquerade himself as an astronaut, and he's taken to Blofeld's chamber where it is explained exactly what's going on with the whole World War III and this, Soviets versus Americans. And the story basically at that point, with everything that goes down, Tanaka has his SSI agents and they attack the S.P.E.C.T.R base. And that's what becomes like the best part about this movie, which I actually think goes above and beyond what Thunderball did, where it's just an all-out war between S.P.E.C.T.R and the agents of Tanaka. And in the process, James Bond is basically trying to stop a satellite or try to stop a rocket to go into space to capture another satellite or man-made spacecraft. And there's so much tension going on because once the base starts exploding, once James Bond finally gets like the upper hand and Blofeld escapes, everything starts to explode around him. And at the very last second, James Bond is able to save the day. He's able to blow up the satellite that is taking the spacecraft, and everything's well and good. But this whole sequence is it's so much fun. It's so exciting. It's so over the top because people are coming from everywhere and things are getting exploded and, people are repelling, they're getting shot. It's just all kinds of chaos. Think about like The Simpsons meet the very end of like Austin Powers, the International Man of Mystery. You're kind of getting what's going on. It's just a very, very cool sequence and one of the best in the Bond franchise up to this point. But yeah, I mean, that's basically the movie in a nutshell. It's not a very complex plot. It has a lot of cool action set pieces. A lot of people die, but that's a typical Bond film. It's actually a lot lighter than even Thunderball or Goldeneye, which are very, very violent. But it's a fun time at the theaters. You're having a good time while watching it. And it's a reason why these movies keep making more and more money, because the more crazy they get with the set pieces, the better the movies become, I guess you could say. But the one thing I do love about this film is just the cultural nature of Japan itself. They really took a lot of care and a lot of respect to kind of give you a view of what Japanese culture is like. In the 60s, it was completely different than what it is now. But, between like the sumo wrestling and like the ideas of what James Bond is doing in the village in Japan and the look of Tokyo and stuff like that, I think it's a beautifully shot. I think Louis Gilbert did a very nice job in this film. Like I said, he's very competent at what he's doing. And I think Roald Dahl just gave this movie kind of a cool, unique flavor that wasn't really kind of something expected, and I really enjoyed it for that. And John Barry, who was the staple of this franchise as a composer, he brings in a little bit of flavor from Japan into this film. It really has a really cool cathartic score with a lot of upbeat action to it. And then Nancy Sinatra did the theme to this movie, You Only Live Twice, and it's fantastic. I think it's one of the best theme scores in the history of the James Bond franchise. This almost is better than Goldfinger, which is a pinnacle of the franchise itself for theme music. But Nancy Sinatra's voice, she did These Boots Are Made for Walking. There's just something kind of relaxing about it, something fun, something unique. And I think it's one of the better sounding themes of the whole entire James Bond franchise. And it's just a wonderful thing to hear. But yeah, I mean, this movie is it's a lot of fun. It's very unique. It's very exciting. It's not the greatest of the film franchises of Sean Connery, but you enjoy it, you have fun with it, and it's a good time in the theaters. So that'll do it. That'll be my take on You Only Live Twice. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button, join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming next, and comment below what you think of this film. Where would you put the Sean Connery era of doing James Bond? And next video, we'll talk about George Lazenby's only film as James Bond with On Her Majesty's Secret Service. But otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.
What's up, guys? Thank you so much for checking out Movie Emporium. I really appreciate it. If you want to, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification button and the bell at the top. Find out what's coming next for Movie Emporium. Also, check out these two videos. They're amazing. I think they're awesome. I think you'll enjoy them too. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.